how to make a striped bass themed welcome sign. Now this sign is going to be designed for outdoor display, so I decided to make it out of a PVC board. It's a little bit more expensive than wood, but it'll never dry rot and theoretically it'll last forever. I traced out the basic shape of a striped bass onto the PVC, and then I just used a jigsaw to cut out right along the outline of the entire fish. It's not a difficult process at all. You just have to take your time and follow the lines. This PVC material is actually a little bit softer than wood, so it actually cuts a little bit easier. So cutting out the outline really didn't take long. And now I'm going to start to shape that. So the main tool for this job is an angle grinder. This is a 4.5-inch angle grinder with a flap sanding wheel. It's a 60 grit. You could use a 40 or an 80 grit. Anywhere in that 60 grit range will work fine. So for the fins, I'm just carving them down a little bit so they're recessed from the top surface of the fish, following right along that outline. And then I'll use that same flap sanding wheel to round them over a little bit and give them some shape. Now it's not a full three-dimensional sculpture, but you do want to just, carve the edges or round over the edges a little bit to give it that illusion. I'm going to use that same angle grinder to start to carve down or recess the lip area or around the lip area. So again, it's nothing very difficult. I'm just carving down right along the outline lines of the lips as well as the gill plates. And this stuff grinds very easily, so you have to really have a light touch. Otherwise, you'd carve halfway through the thickness of the board in a millisecond. So I think this project I did on a kind of a misty Saturday morning, and I finished up all of the carving in a couple of hours. And then, of course, the painting took a little bit longer than that. Using the same angle grinder, I'm just rounding over all of the edges along the whole outside perimeter of the fish. You don't have to get them perfectly smooth or perfectly rounded over. You just want to remove material at this point. I'm going to go back over the entire fish with an oscillating sander. I usually do that with an 80 grit, and then very quickly over the entire thing again with a 120 grit. Before I sand, I'm going to add some grooves to the fins. I'm doing that just with the edge of that flap sanding wheel. And you have to be a little bit careful not to touch the actual fish itself. You just want to put grooves in the actual fins. And this takes a few minutes, but it adds a nice detail to the finished product. Now, I've seen fish-shaped welcome signs before, but they're always just, outline. The outline is cut out and painted. I've never seen one with a little bit of detail added. And the exact same thing for the tail fin, just adding some grooves. And then once the grooves are done, I'm going to go to that oscillating sander and I'm going to round over and smooth out all of the rough grind lines from that 60 grit paper. So 80 grit goes and smooths out and gets rid of all of the deep grooves, and then the 120 really smooths it out. Then I went on to painting. So I started the bottom of the fish with a light silver, just a kind of a base coat. I'm not trying to be perfect with the paint here, to get it to be a perfect match. I'm not a taxidermist. Then I used a dark gray on the top of the fish. Fish are usually darker on the top than they are on the bottom. And after the dark gray, I misted over the very top of the fish and the fins, the dorsal fins, etc., with a black. And after all the painting and the vinyl details are added, I'm going to coat this whole thing with a really high gloss outdoor weather resistant resin. In order to do the stripes, I just put painter's tape down, and then I cut out some stripes, peeled them away. I just used a razor knife for that, and then I just sprayed those with black paint. And once that dried, I peeled away all the painter's tape, and that exposed the stripes. And at this point, you can really see how the project is coming together. It's actually starting to look like a striped bass. I added the eye, and this is just self-adhesive vinyl. I just cut a round circle and then a black circle, put them both together, and I did that on a Silhouette Cameo vinyl cutting machine, as well as the letters, the white lettering. And then I encapsulate all of that vinyl underneath the clear coat. And I'm using a Total Boat Maker Epoxy. It's a very high gloss resin. It's a 2-part resin. You mix it slowly for about 5 minutes. Pour it on and then spread it out with a paintbrush. I like to use a foam brush now. I had started out using disposable paintbrushes, but they always end up, leaving some hairs or some fibers in the resin, whereas the foam, I get a much better result with the foam. Go over the entire surface with a butane lighter very quickly, just to thin out the resin and let any bubbles that are trapped in the mix dissipate, reach the surface and pop. And then I have to let this dry for a couple of days, and then that'll be the finished product. Not difficult at all. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please check us out on the web at DIYEasycrafts.com. Thanks for watching.